Have you ever felt like a brand just gets you? You know, from the very first ad you saw to the moment you opened the box, everything just felt right. Connected. Well, turns out that's no accident. It's all part of a hidden blueprint brands use to guide us along something called the customer journey.
So let's try a little thought experiment. Just think back to the last thing you purchased. How did you even hear about it in the first place? Was it an ad? A friend's recommendation? What was it that made you trust them? And what was that final nudge that made you click buy? That whole process, that was your journey. And almost every step was probably part of a very deliberate plan.
Okay, so at the very heart of this entire blueprint is one key idea: the customer touch point. That's the industry term for basically any and every single time you come into contact with a brand. It covers the entire universe of interactions, from before you buy, during the sale, and even long after.
And we're talking about way more than just the obvious stuff. It's the ad you scrolled past on social media, the review you read on some blog, the look and feel of their website, and it even includes the design of the box that the product arrives in. Every single one of those is a planned-out touchpoint.
So how in the world do brands keep all of this organized? Well, they tend to group all these interactions into three main categories: paid, owned, and earned touchpoints. You can think of these as the three main tools in a brand's communication toolkit. Let's break each one down.
First up, we've got paid touchpoints. This is probably the one you're most familiar with, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's anytime a brand pays some other company to put their message right in front of you. They are literally buying your attention.
Now, what's interesting here are the built-in limits of this approach. First, it's paid, which means the brand doesn't actually own the space they're using. Second, it's usually pretty impersonal. It's designed for mass media, for a huge audience. And finally, it's temporary. That ad campaign only runs for as long as the brand is willing to pay the bills.
And you see these everywhere, right? TV commercials, sponsored posts on Instagram, product placement in movies, those are the classic examples. But it also includes things you might not think about, like the independent retail store that stocks a brand's products. The brand is essentially paying for that shelf space, making it a paid touchpoint.
All right, let's move on to our next category. If paid touchpoints are like renting a billboard, owned touchpoints are like building your own house. These are the channels and platforms that the brand has complete, and I mean total, control over. This is the brand's home turf. They control everything: the message, the design, the entire experience. It's where they can build their own little world for you to step into, whether that's online or in a physical store. So, what are we talking about here? Well, the obvious ones are the company's official website and their social media profiles, or the newsletters you subscribe to. A big, fancy flagship store in a city is a perfect example of a physical owned touchpoint. But here's a crucial one that's easy to miss: the product's packaging. The brand controls every single inch of it. Here's a really clear way to see the difference. Let's talk about salespeople. A direct sales network is made up of actual company employees. That's an owned touchpoint, and the brand has a ton of control. But an indirect network uses outside freelancers or agents, often working on commission. That's a paid touchpoint, and the brand has way less control over exactly what they say. And that brings us to our third, and you could argue most powerful category: earned touchpoints. For marketers, this is the holy grail. This is what happens when the public, when real people start doing the talking for the brand. So the key thing to get here is that earned media isn't bought and it isn't owned, it's generated organically. It's basically the modern digital version of good old-fashioned word of mouth, and it has a level of authenticity that you just can't buy. This could be a news article written about a company's cool new product, an online review from a customer, or just a recommendation from a friend. And every single time someone shares, likes, or comments on a brand's post, they're creating an earned touchpoint. This is the organic buzz that brands dream of.
And this quote right here really nails this strategy. The goal of a really great owned or paid campaign is often to spark this exact thing, to create something so useful, or so funny, or so interesting that people just can't help but share it with their friends.
So, we have our three types: paid, owned, and earned. But how do brands actually combine them so it all makes sense? Well, it's not random at all. There's a very specific playbook they follow.
The official name for this whole process is integrated marketing communication. And really, it's just the art and science of making sure that every single touchpoint works together to tell one clear, consistent story.
And this is how it usually works. It's a 6-step process. First, they figure out exactly who they're trying to talk to. Then, they decide what they want to achieve. Is it just awareness, or is it getting someone to actually buy something? Next, they design the perfect message. And only then do they pick the right mix of paid, owned, and earned channels. Finally, they launch the campaign and measure everything to see what actually worked.
At the end of the day, all of this work, all this planning and strategy is driving towards one single goal: creating a completely seamless and consistent experience for you, the customer.
And there are really two layers to this. Synchronic integration means that at any single stage of your journey, like when you're first researching a product, the ads, the website, and the reviews all tell a consistent story. But diachronic integration is the big picture. It's making sure that story stays consistent across your entire journey, from the first time you hear about a brand to years after you've become a loyal customer.
And that journey usually has 4 clear stages. There's the pre-consumption phase when you're just learning and researching. Then there's the purchase experience itself. After that comes the consumption, actually using the product. And finally, the post-consumption experience, which includes things like customer service. A great brand makes sure the message is the same across all 4.
So, the next time you buy something, try to put on your strategist hat for a second. See if you can spot the different touch points that guided you along the way. Can you pick out the paid, owned, and earned pieces of the puzzle? Now that you've seen the blueprint, you might be surprised at just how clearly you can see the strategy at play.